There's a sound that starts every single morning in this house. Not an alarm, not a phone buzzing on a nightstand, something older than that, something wild. And the moment you hear it, low, rumbling, impossibly close, you realize your life took a turn somewhere that most people's lives simply don't. This is what it's like to live with a bobcat. It didn't start as a plan. Most things that change your life permanently never do. There was a call, the kind that comes in on a quiet Tuesday when you're not expecting anything to shift. A wildlife rehabilitator, a bobcat kitten, an injury that had healed but left something behind. He couldn't go back to the wild, too imprinted, too trusting of humans in a world where that kind of trust gets an animal killed. They needed someone with space, patience, and the specific kind of stubbornness required to say yes to something this unreasonable. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary. That word, temporary, does a lot of work in stories like this one. It carries the weight of every intention that quietly dissolves the moment a small spotted face looks up at you from a crate and decides, without any consultation, that you belong to him now. Within 2 weeks, the house had been renegotiated. Not loudly, not aggressively. There was no dramatic standoff, no moment of teeth and territory. It happened the way rivers reshape stone, gradually, consistently, without apology. The armchair by the window became his observation post. The top of the refrigerator became his preferred thinking perch. The couch, the good one, the one with the cushions that still held their shape, became his afternoon lounging ground, occupied with the kind of full-bodied, stretched-out commitment that made it clear no human sitting was planned for that spot anytime soon. And the bed, that took exactly 4 days. The first night he slept on the floor near the door, cautious, watching, still carrying the instincts of a creature that doesn't fully trust enclosed spaces. The second night he was on the foot of the bed, the third somewhere in the middle. By the fourth night he had claimed the left side with the quiet authority of someone who had simply decided the matter was settled. There was no negotiation, there was no vote, there was only a bobcat, arranged on a pillow, watching with amber eyes as a grown adult man tried to figure out how to get comfortable in what remained of his own bed. Nights were fine, actually. That part is important to say because this story could give the wrong impression. At night he was something close to peaceful. He'd settle in, curl with a heaviness that was disproportionate to his size, and sleep with a stillness that felt almost meditative. Sometimes he'd press his back against a leg or rest his chin on a forearm, and in those moments, in the dark, in the quiet, it was easy to forget that this was unusual. It felt like what it was. Two creatures who had found an arrangement that worked. A kind of trust that doesn't require words. Mornings were a different country entirely. It began subtly enough. In those first weeks when the light would start to come through the curtains and the room would shift from dark to gray, there'd be movement at the end of the bed, a stretch, a yawn, wide, slow, the kind that shows every tooth without any particular threat behind it. Then stillness again, just the awareness of being watched. Then one morning, there was a paw, just one, placed carefully on an arm, with a patience that almost seemed polite. When that produced nothing, no movement, no acknowledgement, no food appearing, the paw pressed down slightly, then lifted, then pressed again. It had the rhythm of someone who had all the time in the world and was fully prepared to use it. It was honestly almost manageable, almost endearing even. That didn't last, because a bobcat, it turns out, does not plateau. He does not find a method that works and stick with it out of consideration for anyone's sleep schedule. He iterates, he experiments. He brings to the task of waking a sleeping human the same focused, unhurried, problem-solving energy that his wild cousins bring to stalking prey through tall grass, methodical, adaptive, completely unbothered by failure. The paw gave way to something more direct. One morning there was weight, real weight, stepping deliberately across a chest. Another morning a chin came to rest on a forehead, accompanied by breathing that was warm and close and smelled distinctly of the previous night's meal. There was a morning when he simply sat, directly on a face, not with aggression, not even with impatience, just with the calm certainty of an animal who has identified the most efficient point of contact and sees no reason to overthink it. And through all of it, through every escalation, every new approach, every creative renegotiation of personal space, there was something in his expression that was impossible to read as anything other than complete sincerity. He wasn't being difficult. He wasn't being funny. He was simply communicating, in the clearest way he knew, that morning had arrived, that he was aware of it, and that it seemed unreasonable that only one of them was. Living with a bobcat wasn't the plan, but somewhere between the first temporary week and the morning a 40-pound wild cat sat on his face with the quiet dignity of someone who had never once doubted his choices, it became something harder to name than a plan. It became home. There's a particular kind of morning that becomes the new normal when you live with a bobcat. You don't ease into the day, you get launched into it. It started with the walking, not pacing, walking, directly across the chest, with the deliberate, unhurried stride of someone completing a scheduled inspection, each paw placed with full intention, no apology, no detour, just a route that happened to cross directly over a rib cage at 6 in the morning, repeated until something in the room changed, meaning until the eyes opened and the day officially began on his terms. When that became expected, he adjusted. That's the thing nobody tells you about living with a wild animal. They're not creatures of pure habit. They're observers. They study what works and what stops working, and they update accordingly. The chest walking had lost its element of surprise, so it was quietly retired. What replaced it was worse. The face. Not aggressive, never aggressive, just present. He would position himself with a kind of geometric precision directly over the head, sit down slowly, and simply exist there, warm, heavy, completely unbothered. The message was clear even if the delivery was absurd. You are awake now. We both know it. Let's stop pretending. Some mornings it was sound, a sound that is difficult to describe to anyone who hasn't heard it, somewhere between a chirp and a growl, produced at close range directly into an ear, carrying the full acoustic force of an animal whose vocal cords were designed for open wilderness, not bedroom walls. It didn't ask, it announced. There were mornings with the tail, slow, rhythmic, sweeping directly across a face like a metronome counting down to an inevitable conclusion. There were mornings when he'd locate a foot beneath the blanket, somehow, always accurately, and sit on it with a patience that could outlast any human commitment to staying asleep. And through every single variation, every new technique, every escalation in the daily campaign to end the night, he maintained the same expression, calm, focused, entirely reasonable by his own internal logic. The thing is, and this is the part that's hard to explain to people who ask why you don't just close the bedroom door, you start to look forward to it. Not immediately, not at first, but somewhere along the way the chaos becomes the rhythm, the absurdity becomes the routine. And on the rare morning when he sleeps in, when the room stays quiet past that usual hour, the silence feels wrong. You lie there waiting, and somehow you miss it. There was a morning that was different from the others. No paw on the arm, no weight across the chest, no sound delivered at close range into a sleeping ear, just stillness, the kind that registers before you're fully conscious, the way a change in weather registers before you open your eyes. Something in the room felt different, too quiet, too still. He was on the bed, but he wasn't moving, just sitting near the pillow, watching, not with the focused, purposeful energy of a creature with an agenda, with something else, something quieter. His eyes tracked slowly when the blanket shifted, but he didn't move toward it, didn't press, didn't escalate, just watched. It took a moment to understand what was different. Then it landed. He wasn't trying to wake anyone up. He was simply there, present in the way animals are present when something in the air has shifted and their instincts have moved them from one mode into another. He had read the room in whatever wordless way he reads everything, and he had decided that this particular morning called for something other than chaos. There are things you don't expect when you take in an animal like this. You prepare for the difficulty. You prepare for the wildness, the unpredictability, the learning curve of sharing space with a creature whose instincts were shaped by a world entirely different from yours. You prepare for the chaos, even when it makes you laugh. You don't prepare for the moments when they see you, not look at you, see you, when they pick up on something you haven't said out loud and respond to it, not with words, not with any gesture a human would make, but with presence, with the simple, quiet act of staying close. He stayed close that whole morning, moved when moved, settled when still, kept that amber gaze soft and near without demand. At one point he rested his chin on a knee and held it there, not performing comfort, not seeking anything in return, just resting, just being the particular kind of company that doesn't require explanation. There's a question people ask sometimes about animals like him, about whether what they feel resembles what we feel, whether the bond runs in both directions, or whether we're simply projecting warmth onto something that operates purely on instinct. That morning didn't answer the question, but it made the question feel smaller, because whatever was happening in that quiet room, whatever that stillness was, whatever that unhurried closeness meant, it felt in every way that mattered like exactly what it looked like. He knew, and he stayed anyway. People ask sometimes how it all works, how you share a house with something wild, how you manage the space, the schedule, the sheer improbability of it. They ask practical questions, mostly, what does he eat, where does he sleep, isn't it dangerous? And those questions have answers, straightforward ones. But underneath those questions is usually a different one people don't always say directly. Was it worth it? There's a moment that comes back often when that question surfaces. An ordinary evening, nothing remarkable about it. Dinner finished, light fading outside, the house settling into the particular quiet it finds at the end of a day. He was on the couch, stretched across the full length of it with the boneless ease of an animal completely at home. One eye half open, tail moving in a slow, unconscious arc, just existing, fully, completely, without reservation. And sitting nearby, watching him, something became clear that had been assembling itself quietly for a long time. Something that living with a 40-pound wild cat teaches you if you pay attention. He doesn't carry yesterday. Whatever happened, the disrupted sleep, the morning chaos, the moments of stubbornness and noise and complete disregard for personal space, none of it follows him into the next hour. He doesn't hold on to it, doesn't catalog grievances or rehearse frustrations. When the moment passes, it passes completely. What remains is only what's in front of him, the light through the window, the warmth of the cushion, the presence of someone nearby. That's the whole thing. He arrived as a rescue, injured, displaced, unable to return to the life his instincts were built for. That's the version of his story that exists on paper, but somewhere in the daily negotiation of shared space, somewhere between the chaos of every morning and the quiet of every night, the story quietly reversed itself. He wasn't the one who got rescued, not entirely, because what he brought into this house, the presence, the honesty, the complete absence of pretense, has a way of recalibrating things, of slowing down the parts of life that move too fast to feel, of reminding you, every single morning without fail, that the day has arrived and it's worth getting up for. Even when the reminder involves sitting on your face, especially then, he's still here, still on the left side of the bed, still watching from the refrigerator and ruling the couch and launching every morning with the focused dedication of an animal who takes his responsibilities seriously. And every day, without